Call this meeting of the Prescott Unified School District Governing Board to order. Welcome to all of you. It's nice to see so many faces here tonight. That's great. We're delighted to have you here. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Really?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lily. All right, we will move on to the approval of the agenda. Did you all have a chance to take a look at the agenda? Any additions, corrections, anything? Okay, could I have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. We also need to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Again, were there any changes, corrections, additions? Hearing none, could I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of January 11, 2022 as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. All right, we have some presentations to do tonight. As we announced, and I'm going to stand up for this. As we announced last month, and I'm going to do this, I'm far enough from you all that I don't think I'll infect you, that we will be honoring one or more of PUSD's employee groups, excuse me, each month with a declaration at our monthly board meeting. In addition to the official declaration at the meeting, our superintendent and one or more board members will reach out personally to extend our appreciation to that group. Students, other staff, and families are also encouraged to thank members of that month's honored group through posts on the PUSD Facebook page or more directly to individuals. We want every employee of PUSD to feel the love and know how special they are to us. Could I get Stephanie and Terry and Shannon and Sadira to come forward? We are therefore declaring February as Paraprofessionals Month. We have asked the supervisors, Terry Gorman and Stephanie Hillig, representing our principals, and a few of our Parapros to join us tonight and to share this recognition with their cohorts. Our paraprofessionals are Shannon Nugent and Sadira De Marino. Parents, do you appreciate knowing there is a caring individual keeping an eye on your child on the playground? Teachers, are you glad to have someone to help your students who need a little extra support?
Yes.
Students, are you happy to have someone besides your teacher who will assist you both in class and out?
Yes, they are.
You can all thank our Parapros for these things. Terry, Would you tell us just a little bit about the duties and expectations, there you are, for PUSD special education parents?
Wow. Well, first off, they are an integral part of our special education programs. They are the backbone. They perform a variety of duties, supporting special ed teachers, providing small group instruction, managing difficult behaviors, taking care of kiddos who need help toileting and need help feeding and need help with mobility. So we could not do our work without them.
Stephanie, could you tell us about some of the general duties for Parapros in our schools?
Well, there's no general duties, because I can honestly say they do it all. So they sometimes step into the realm of the special ed and help out wherever they are needed. But, you know, just to say how important gen ed and character coaches are to our building, our school unanimously nominated Sadira as our, in the Tribune magazine. Sarah, I just lost the whole word of what it was, but as the staff member of the year for AbidaGen, because she supports our teachers constantly. She is at recess supporting our kids. She's pulling them and she's giving them the social and emotional support in addition to the academic when she can. But she is truly, we're blessed to have her because she teaches all of our kids and our staff about culture and keeps it positive and the morale up every day. So we're blessed.
Thank you. As you can see, our paraprofessionals do a lot in and for our students and our schools. So Sarah Vincent, one of our board members, has a certificate she'd like to present to you as the governing board hereby declares February as Paraprofessionals Month in PUSD. Thank you all for everything you do. Okay, thanks for being here. Yeah. All right. The next presentation that we have this evening is a presentation by Missy Townsend, our athletic director, who is going to tell us about Prescott High School pickleball courts.
So yeah, I wanted to come and share with the board an exciting project that we've been working on to add 3 pickleball courts on the outdoor basketball courts that have kind of largely gone unused over the last kind of 10 years. And pickleball has been something that has really gained popularity in our community as well as with our athletes and our students even at our school, as can be attested probably by our Pickleball Association with them playing on their courts all the time. And so I actually reached out to, and this is, the actual courts are actually going to be installed starting next week. But I wanted to bring up Mr. Douglas Seafield from the Prescott Pickleball Association and make sure that we give them some attention here. For first and foremost, I reached out to them and I said, hey, we are interested in doing these pickleball courts. Is there any way that you guys would be interested in partnering with us to help us pay for them? And literally within 15 minutes of me sending that email, reaching out to them, they said absolutely. And in addition to the Prescott Pickleball Association, the City of Prescott Parks and Rec also agreed to partner with us on this project, and within 15 minutes of sending it said we absolutely would love to partner with Prescott High School and PUSD on this. So all 3 groups got together and they have all donated, both the city and the Prescott Pickleball Association have each donated $5,000 towards the building of these courts. And we're really excited because not only are our PE classes, our adaptive PE classes, but all of our local community will now have a place to play pickleball that isn't all the way out at Pioneer Park or potentially at the YMCA. So it was a great partnership. We're super excited to be working with them, and I wanted to bring it to the board so that you guys could also acknowledge the great community partnership that we've had on this and how willing they were to step up and help us get this done. So just wanted to make sure we give them thanks and just recognize what we're doing over there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
could I-
to both the Pickleball
Great partnership.
Association and the City of Prescott.
Could I
So,
ask
nice job, Missy.
one quick question?
Yeah.
Will the pickleball courts be dual use, basketball and pickleball still, or?
Yes, great
Okay.
question. Sir, yeah, perfect. So you'll see that there are actually 4 basketball courts. 3 of them will be converted into pickleball, but we will not take away the basketball
Okay.
features, so you can still play half-court basketball.
Okay.
We will leave the one court there on the pink, will stay a full-court basketball
Okay.
court. We do have some local community people that do use that court. We don't typically use it for any of our PE classes or anything, but we wanted to make sure that it became kind of a dual purpose.
Yeah.
We are also adding, which I didn't mention, but we are also adding brand new fencing, and I'll show you right here along the wash. And then we'll add an actual fence that'll go across right here with the walk-through gate so that no vehicles or anything can drive on and cause damage to any of the courts. And that way the balls don't roll down into the ditch that you're
Where is that located?
This is in the north parking lot. So this street, this is actually the bus stop. There's a pull-through, so this is Wetstein, and Ruth is right here. So
Are you guys going to resurface or leave concrete?
they will remain concrete.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to do this.
Sorry.
But we can't have members of the audience asking questions of the presenters. Sorry.
I'm sorry, you guys are more than welcome to email me if you have any further questions. I'd be happy to
Or when she
answer.
walks out the door, you can go out and ask her.
So thank you.
Well, based on what I see in Pioneer Park on a regular basis, this is going to get a lot of use. I know there will be plenty of community members that'll be there using those courts, so
Yeah,
that's
and
great.
I've already, the Prescott Pickleball Association has already volunteered to help us put on clinics or camps or help youth, even our elementary, learn how to play pickleball, and are willing to kind of partner with that, and then as well as the city. So we foresee even more partnerships with both groups moving forward to kind of utilize these facilities.
That's great.
Any
We love to
other-
have the community on our campuses.
Absolutely.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Thank you.
Thanks, Missy.
Thank you guys
Appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, each month, we take a look at one of our schools and what they're doing, and this month, it's Abaya Judd and Stephanie Hillig, principal at Abaya Judd.
Good evening once again. So thank you for honoring our paraprofessionals, because that's really, really important that we recognize them as often as we can. So I am here just to answer 4 basic questions about our school and give a brief presentation about it. And so the first question, okay, Sarah, I think you told me how to do it. Hey, what is unique about Abaya Judd? And we get asked this question all the time. And I give a lot of credit to my predecessors, and one of them sitting in here right now, to just the culture and the climate that we have at Abaya Judd. It is absolutely amazing. When my kids went through Abaya Judd, which my youngest is a senior in high school right now, so that'll tell you how long ago it was. I would actually go down as the principal at Granite Mountain at the time, and I was able to go down and teach character lessons. And so that has been something that has carried on through all these years. So let me show you, instead of telling you, what is so unique. And thank you to Sadira for creating this video for us. It's short.
She does it all.
This is a kinder class. That's a second grade class.
Healthy and safe. Stand up for yourself. Be responsible. Be a citizen, not a bully. We established this class constitution, making the world a better place.
As an adult and a treasure hunter, I am committed to search for all the talents, skills, and intelligence that exists in all children.
This is a fourth grade
I
class.
strongly believe that all children are capable of success, no exceptions.
This is what we do every Friday, which is we honor a student from every class as a kid of character. So this month our focus is on caring. Okay, so now how do I get back to the PowerPoint to do that? So what you saw there was the start of each day. And so every day I start off with the announcements, and then I say teachers at this time do the treasure hunters pledge, followed by the student pledge and the Pledge of Allegiance. And each day the students do some sort of a pledge, which you saw two different versions of that. And each day our staff does a pledge to the students that we believe in them and we care about them and we will support them in anything that they do. So once we have that established and students know that they have all of this support and love and a safe learning environment, that's where we believe that the real learning is going to take place, because now they feel safe and they feel like their basic needs are met. And now we can start tapping in and pushing those high expectations. And so I got a call from Brian Moore early in this year, and I about jumped out of my skin when he told me that Abaya Judd scored in the top 6% of the AZ Merit scores this year, so on the AZM2. So that is a huge tribute to Abaya Judd during a COVID year, that we could score that high and be that successful with our students. And I really believe that it is because of the care and the love and the support and how students feel when they get there, that we're able to push them in academics. So the next question was, how do you garner and use parent and family feedback? So these are the different ways that we get feedback from our parents. The biggest one is just having the parents, when they can, either come into a Google Meets or a Zoom meeting, or having them just shoot an email. Our teachers are great about giving us feedback and talking to us. Most of the time, we are getting pretty positive feedback. When they're giving me feedback, say about the parking lot, a lot of times I'll listen to them, but I'll say, trust the process. I'll get you there. And things do work out, but they are really, really good about giving us some feeling tone about what's going on in the community and about things that they are perceiving that we're doing that might not be the perception that we're wanting to give out. Or like, for example, last year, one of the things that parents were really confused about was we were sending home STAR reports and Galileo reports, which is our district assessment tests. Parents had no clue what those reports meant. So that was really good feedback for us to get. So this year, when we sent out the STAR reports, I also sent out a video like the one you just saw, a 2-minute video to the parents showing them how to read and interpret the STAR report for their child. So that's where the feedback is really important, because it makes changes. The Cna process, which is the comprehensive need assessment, once again, Sadira sat with me all day yesterday, and we had a team of 10, 12 people. Some were in Zoom, some were there, and it was great because we had Darla from the district office here was in our meeting. We had grants in our meeting. We had 3 parents in our meeting. We had Sadira representing the classified. We had teachers. That is just a really great way to do a needs assessment on our school and get feedback. And then we come down to an action plan. And so we came up with 3 action plans yesterday that we're going to focus on for the rest of this year and into next year. So it's really, really good to have parents on there, and parents that are active and are communicating with other parents, because they come in really representing those family groups well. So that's great. It's hard to do this right now, I won't lie, in a COVID year. You usually get more feedback when you're when you have events on your campus, even if it's like a character assembly. Right now, parents aren't invited to our character assembly, where 2 years ago, they were able to come and we could talk at the breakfast beforehand, and I'd get a lot of just kind of informal feedback. and build those relationships, and this year we're not doing that. So one of the things that we do is whenever we have a site-based counselor or a PTO meeting or anything that we can invite parents through electronically, we're making sure that we send the links out and the agenda out to the families ahead of time. So that's how we do that, and that's just a couple of examples on how we use that feedback to make positive changes in our school. The third question was, what do you do to get new students and families off on the right foot, regardless of when they arrive? Again, this has changed a lot. On the website, we have, and we're not going to play these for you, but these are videos that one is of me just giving kind of a general overview on our website, and then another one is all my kinder teachers are on there because it's usually kinder parents that are the most nervous and anxious. And so all my kinder teachers, and it gives a snapshot of their classroom. So we're trying to put information out there. Last year, Sadira and I, you can tell she's like my right hand. Last year, Sadira and I made a great video about touring the school, and we talked about lunch and recess and all this great stuff. And so on February 17th, we have our kinder open house for next year's kinders already. And so we will push that out once again on the website, that video. So anyone, whether they're wanting to come to a Bio-Ed next year as a fourth grader or a kinder, they'll have that general video so that they know what to expect. But you know, we have a pretty good establishment on our website. Everybody, and it's updated, it's accurate right now for our current year staff. So it's listed on there who our staff is. When we get a new student, one of the things we want to make sure is that when they come in, the teacher's there to greet them. So we have the teacher greet them, they greet the parents, and they come in before school starts at like 7:30, and the teacher takes the parent down and does kind of an introduction and a tour of the school and shows them where their kid's going to sit and how they do lunches and just the general routine of the classroom. So that has really helped because we're not doing like the widespread tours like we used to do. But every once in a while, I'll give a one-on-one tour, but it's pretty modified. I don't take them into classrooms or anything like that. So that's how we do it. And then we communicate with them right away. As soon as they register on InfoSnap, we're starting to send them our parent announcements so they know what's going on in our building. So the last question was, how do you ensure high expectations for all students? And I started this presentation off with that. We ensure it by making sure those kids' basic needs are met. We make sure they're fed. We make sure they know they can talk to us. We make sure that they have clothing. We just did a partnership with the Lions to get glasses for a little girl. So we do all sorts of things to make sure that their basic needs are met. And then we tap into the high expectations. And the number one way we do that, I really feel, is by celebrating their successes. And we took this to a whole new level this year. So Sadira and I, my daughter actually made the rocket. So our theme this year was Reach for the Stars. And so we have a rocket on the main wall, and you can kind of see the stars in the one picture. As students improve and show either academic growth or behavior growth sometimes, they get to put a star on the wall. And so it's been really, really fun to see that school-wide. We have always done some sort of modified version of that in the classroom, whether it was, kids coloring their own graph or something like that, or we have little mountain men in third grade that move up as they beat their AR goal. But this is school-wide, and it's really, really powerful when you walk in our building, and it's right there at the front doors. And when we do have parents come in, they're always like, what is that? And it's fun. It's really fun. So, but the nuts and bolts of how we do our high expectations is right here. And I know Sarah shared this with you, and I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but I want to tell you what we do with this. This is our trilateral goal, and a lot of, I'm not saying schools here in Prescott because Joe does a great job rolling this out, but a lot of times, and in other districts that I've worked in, it's a hoop to jump through at the beginning of the year. But I can tell you, in our buildings, this is a living document. And just last Friday, as a staff, we went through, and all of the white boxes are our action plans on how we're going to meet our school goal. And we ranked ourselves on a scale of 1 to 5 where we're at on our action plan. And you want to see, really, we're halfway through the year, so you want to see like 3s are good. And some of them we actually gave ourselves a 5. And so, because we've met kind of some of that, but this is how we do it. And this is talking about, do we know our curriculum? Are we creating the culture we want? Are we looking at data? That's a huge one on here. That green box has 3 action plans just around looking at data. And then the intervention groups that we're doing, the hour that we give each day for the kids to work in those intervention groups. How are we doing that? What are we doing to make sure that that's hitting the target and meeting the needs of the kids? So this is the work that we all put into it behind the scenes as far as curriculum, data, and instructional strategies. Now, we always start off our staff meetings and our school days with good things, which I did. If you noticed, I talked about good things at our school and showed you a little video, and we always leave every staff meeting with a launch. So here is your launch for you guys all to read, and this is what we have posted on the Rocket for the kids to read every day when they put their star up. So thank you so much for letting me be with you tonight, and if you have any questions, you can either get me in the hallway, or you're always welcome to email me.
Board members, any comments, questions for Stephanie?
All I can say is that I hear nothing but kudos for Abaya Judd.
Thank you.
Everybody talks about them. And the short period of time that my daughter was there, she was so sad to leave. And she said, "That's the best school I've ever gone to." And it really is. There's just, I think culture is really the most important thing in any school. But that place, I know teachers who worked there years ago that still talk about what a good experience it was, what a good culture existed there. And I don't know. I have not had any close contact with them, but it has a great reputation.
Thank you. Well, we work really hard to keep the morale of the staff up, and we have a lot of fun. And I think that's a big part of it, is making sure our staff feels supported and valued and enjoys what they do every day. And it carries over to their instruction too. The kids feel it. So thank you for saying.
Deb, if I can piggyback, just amazing history, amazing students, parents, PTA, statewide known, and amazing teachers. If I'm in doubt, sometimes I just go walk through those halls and I walk out going, all right, we got this stuff going. But what I want to say is that, as you all know, leadership matters, and you're hard pressed to find someone like Stephanie Hillig, who has as much experience and heart as she has, and it makes a difference.
Thank you.
And I think you just saw it here tonight. So
Thank you.
And thanks for continuing the culture at Abaya Judd.
It is my
It's
pleasure.
been a long time that it's been like this, and I'm really happy for that.
I was particularly pleased, Stephanie, to hear you mention the information sheet you're sending out with test results. I did read through your trilateral goals, and I had put a plus on that one.
Yes.
So
I'll send you my video if you want to see it. It's really corny. But it is effective.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, one thing that stood out to me was not just your use of the video in the presentation, which gave me a window into the classroom as someone that can't necessarily make it there, but also it seems that you all have done an amazing job using videos and technology to keep families engaged in a time when it's hard to be there in person. So
We're certainly trying.
among
Yeah.
everything else, I was impressed with
Thank
that,
you.
so thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you coming. All right, we'll move on now to the summary of current events. Mr. Howard?
just one item for you tonight, because most of what I'm up to is on the agenda this evening. Some of you may remember that Robin Bryce from Prescott High School was the CTE Teacher of the Year for the entire state of Arizona. And so what I want to announce is that we're
we're putting her in for the National CTE Teacher of the Year. So we're just starting that process, but I just wanted to let you know, and we'll keep you posted. We're really excited about that. We think she has a shot.
Great.
Very good. Any board members have anything you'd like to share? I will tell you that last month, we recognized our bus drivers and our facilities crews. I went and met with those groups, and they were so delighted to be recognized and to have someone notice all that they do. So I'm really pleased that we are embarking on this process of recognizing our employees, because they're what makes this district run. So that was very heartening for me, and I appreciated it. I've been doing a lot of visits for PUSD lately. I attended a Republican women's group where they recognized their volunteers who work in our schools, and we appreciate the work that they do. I met with Clark and some people from Yavapai College about ways that we might work cooperatively, you know, just starting the conversation. We didn't make any firm plans, but talking about that. I went to a President's Roundtable yesterday, and I watched a number of Zoom presentations in the last couple weeks, and I won't go into those either because we'll get to that in another part of the agenda, but it's been a busy few weeks, so. All right, anything else? All right, next we move on to the consent agenda. It's fairly short. Does anyone have any questions or want any further explanation on any of the items on the consent agenda?
I have one question. Under donations, how are the Arizona State tax credit donations included in that when they come in, or those are not part of the donations category?
They are not.
Okay.
Yeah, these are gifts, specifically what falls under gifts and donations,
Okay.
and so tax credit is not one of those.
Okay. Thank you.
And as usual, we would really like to thank anyone who has made a donation to the district. Anything else on the consent agenda?
I have a question.
Yep.
For, and maybe it'll come out later, but Clark, relevant information, what is a copy of the personnel report?
So that should be attached to your board book, and it lists the folks who we have hired in the last month, or plan to hire soon, and folks who have resigned or will be resigning soon for either ratification by the board or approval in advance by the board.
Okay.
And that's something that we attach to each of your agendas each month. Personnel hiring and letting go is technically the domain of the board. You delegate the legwork to Mr. Howard and to me to get those, and principals to find good folks, but when it comes to, are we gonna hire this person or are we gonna let this person go, that's up to the board. Typically, because you delegated those things to us and you don't, and the details are available to you if you ever wanna ask in advance. It typically appears on the consent agenda.
Okay, because this is the first one I've seen.
Okay, well, it's on.
Since I've been on the board.
Yeah, it's on every month.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right. Could I get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That must be Carr.
That's Carr.
Okay.
Thank you, Carr. We heard you.
Motion passes. All right. We're moving on to the study and voting section of the agenda. Sarah, were there any requests to speak? No. All right. First item is to consider taking action to temporarily suspend the district's restriction against the presence and consumption of alcohol on district grounds, specifically at Prescott Mile High Middle School's football field and track area for 7 special events as requested by the City of Prescott Recreation Services. Mr. Howard.
Yeah, another great partnership with the City of Prescott, and another great example how we do not like to have our buildings rest on weekends. These are community buildings and fields, and we like our community to spend time on them. So this is something that the board's worked on for the past 7 or 8 years. We've seen some really neat events where a lot of the community comes out, and a lot of those funds go to our nonprofits in town and that type of thing. So great partnership all the way through. But what we do here is we ask the board to waive the alcohol policy for that day only. These are never days when students are on campus. We've seen less the last couple of years due to COVID, of course. There's been a couple of things out there, but hoping to get back to filling Mile High Middle School. And then one of these events is in Hendricks Auditorium. It's Dancing for the Stars, Boys and Girls Club. Just some really neat events there. There are 7 events. We can talk about the details of any of those. We have Michelle available on the phone from the city. They weren't able to be here tonight, but we can ask any questions to her directly if we can't field them for the board.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments on this item?
I had one question, Deb.
Yep.
I'm just curious, you probably told me already at some point, Joe, where does the money the revenue that we get from this, does it just go into the general fund, or where does that go?
Yeah, good question, Cara. It goes into our civic funds, which is any type of rentals that we do. Sometimes we rent to churches, sometimes we rent to all different organizations, but that goes into that civic fund, and that civic fund funds some of our marketing, but it largely goes back into the buildings for the wear and tear that may happen in these events with the community. So it's one of the very few areas where we can generate revenue as a school district, and so we try to make that happen.
I don't necessarily need to know what all 7 are, but what are some examples of the events that we're waiving for?
You bet. There's an attachment there, and I'll go through the names of them. But Nation's Finest Game of Throws. So, again, it's live music, food. There's alcohol. Pure Imagination Festival. That's more of a music one. Food trucks. Benefits music in area schools. Yay. My favorite. They haven't done this yet, but I like the name the most. Taco the Town. Not Talk of the Town. Taco the Town. So you can figure out what's going with that. That one benefits the sister cities of Caborca, Mexico, mariachis and food trucks. Downtown Rodeo Experience. This is a new one. It's gonna. The idea is that get people fired up for the rodeo, and it goes, I think, for several days before the 4th. And again, live entertainment, music, and food benefits the world's oldest rodeo, which is certainly a partner. Prescott Brewfest. That's one we've had for a while. That's Eagle Management, and that's food trucks and music. And then there's 2 more. Dancing for the Stars. We were super excited to land that at Hendricks Auditorium. It's such a neat venue, and they used the quad and everything and really put on a classy event. Seems like they enjoyed that. And then Oktoberfest on September 17th. That benefits Zeitz, Germany, Sister City program. So those are some of them. Some of those we've seen before, and generally they have music, they have a stage, and people are going around buying food and that type of thing. So.
Other questions? I have a couple. Just out of curiosity, 3 of these events are going to be managed, I assume, by this Eagle Management and Events. Just curious who they are.
Steve Gottlieb, if you know Steve, runs that. I don't know enough about it to give much of a description, but what I will say is As a district, we do not manage any of these. We wouldn't manage any of
Yeah.
these, but the city manages all of these. So there's a whole permitting piece, and you've got Joe Baines in there as a piece of that, and we have never had an issue. Believe me, if there's a mess afterwards, principals are calling me up saying, hey, there was a mess. But we've never had an issue with the city in any of these events. And we could also call Michelle if we want more
Yeah.
detail on Eagle.
No, that's fine. My other question was whether the beneficiaries of each of these events are all nonprofit.
Yeah, and they have to be for permitting.
Okay.
That's, I think that's policy through City of Prescott. And it may be attached to law, but that's the whole piece.
Yeah.
To get that alcohol permit, there has to be a certain amount donated to a nonprofit.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
sometimes it's us or our foundation
Yeah,
or
yeah.
our students, yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm more than happy to take the money.
Yes, we like that. And I will say that for these events only, we charge an alcohol fee. Because of the time and effort that it takes for you all and our staff to work through the kind of the red tape of all of this. And so that benefits directly into our civics accounts.
Okay. I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Motion to temporarily suspend the district's restriction against the presence and consumption of alcohol on district grounds, specifically for Mile High Middle School football field and track area for the 7 special events as presented, as requested by the City of Prescott Recreation Services.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we temporarily suspend the district's restriction against the presence and consumption of alcohol on district grounds, specifically for Prescott Mile High Middle School's football field and track area for 7 special events as requested by the City of Prescott Recreation Services as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. The next item up for a vote is an intergovernmental agreement for election services between the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors and the Yavapai County Recorder and PUSD number 1.
So these this is something we try to always keep updated, and it's time to update it. So this information and the IGA came to us from our county friends over at the county recorder's office, and our attorney's taking a look at it. But they facilitate our elections. So we have board elections from time to time. We have bonds or overrides, or we may go to the voters to ask if they would give us permission to sell a site. So whatever that is, they facilitate that for us. And then also, there's two-way here. I mean, we offer support in facilities and people through the election process. There's not a lot that we do anymore with mail-in, but we are locations where ballots could be turned in at times, and then also we may round up volunteers to man those sites if needed. So there is an IGA here, and lots of legalese in those, but this is basically a partnership and long-standing trust with our colleagues at the county.
Okay, questions? Comments? If not, could I get a motion, please?
I move that the board approve an intergovernmental agreement for election services between the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors and the Yavapai County Recorder and PUSD number 1 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve an intergovernmental agreement for election services between the Yavapai County Board of Supervisors and the Yavapai County Recorder and PUSD number 1 as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. Moving on to the information and discussion section, we actually have quite a bit to discuss tonight. So, Brian, your summary budget report?
As presented?
As presented, thank you. ESSER COVID information. Brian?
Yeah, just a few weeks since the last governing board meeting. Just wanted to give an update that the parent survey kept open, and we had about 375 parents that did respond. The sample size didn't affect really the areas of importance. Surprisingly, the two areas that were deemed the least was, it was equally important because they ranked it 1 through 5 about disinfecting and cleaning and upgrading the facilities for clean air and surfaces. So literally it was like 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5. The other one was providing materials and resources to parents to help them with their child's education and filling in the gaps. That was kind of, once again, evenly split with a little bit more in the middle. Other than that, upgraded technology, facilities in general, not so much related to disinfecting and cleaning. And so it kind of came the same pattern as what the staff had taken the survey and results. So that was a survey, and the capital lists were brought to the district admin team this week and previewed last week. And so at the district leader team meeting today, we have let the principals know that they're going to receive an allocation. We're going to try to do it in 3 phases. A first phase, they would receive an allocation based on a per pupil amount to start prioritizing their capital needs and let's start spending the money. And so that once they get that done, it'll come back to DAT, and then we have to jump through the hoops with the state of Arizona with budgeting and getting approval of those purchases. And so hopefully at the next governing board meeting, I'll be able to say, besides the fiber optic upgrade that we said yes to because our internet needs to be sped up, we can say, hey, at Abide Judd, these were their top priorities and their allocation was to this area. And that's what I got.
And I'll just add, I mean, a large amount of money from the ESSERs has been spent on COVID mitigation, positions that have helped us, helped principals, helped us get through that, and contact tracing and things like that, equipment to help with mitigation, that type of thing. So that's really your first round. And what Brian's talking about is the second round, and it's really things that are quite needed. You'll see in our schools. It's hard to read the list because it's things that we should have already had in our classrooms, but we don't have the budget to do that. So this is going to help, and ultimately it all circles back to helping to fill the gaps and to play catch up from what COVID has done to us. So there's a lot of talk and shift going around about ESSER, and it was early on introduced as a no strings attached, and we've seen strings attached more and more and more and more. And Arizona Department of Education is being helpful with that. They have lots of webinars and lots of resources and people that we can talk to, but they also have a lot of new staff that are coming in and saying no a lot more than we've had. So we're learning how to work through that, and super grateful for Darla, who's our employee that is focusing on that completely, getting lots of input from schools and parents and the whole thing. So we're getting there with this.
Yeah, the process for budget approval is seeming to be longer because they're going line by why that, and the justification, it goes back and forth 6-7 times before they go, okay, now you can spend the money.
I appreciate the effort, just getting that parent input.
You're welcome.
And I'm curious if you could just share a brief overview of, because you mentioned this is phase 1 of the allocation, which is actually kind of phase 2, but when are the other phases going to roll out?
We have until this September for the ESSER 1 allocation, which we only have about $25,000 left. ESSER 2, we have 1 year from this September, and then ESSER 3, 2 years from this September. We have lots of needs out there, so I don't think that we're going to be recommending sitting on the money. So I think we're kind of navigating timelines when it comes to, okay, now you have an allocation, and just see how long it goes from prioritizing to the purchase requisition to the budgeting to the justification by AD to the here's our justification, that wasn't good enough, so now justify more. all the way through the purchase order and then see, is that 6 months from now that we kind of get everything through phase one and then start talking with the second phase. So I don't have an exact answer, but the timeline to spend the money is black and white.
Well, we have till 2024 to spend
ESSER
the
3.
bulk of it, the ESSER 3. But I don't think we plan on waiting. I think a lot of this is how slow is the bureaucracy on it.
Right.
You know, there'll be a lot of back and forth, like, no, you can't do this, and then we'll say it differently, and they'll say, oh, you can do it, and so we'll figure out how that works. And ADE, again, is helping us with that, but also our colleagues across the state are all going through this, so we're all kind of helping each other and figuring out how this is going to work. But Fed money can be tricky.
Yeah, and one of the large areas that they said no strings attached was the opportunity cost of decreased enrollments played into it. With decreased enrollment is decreased M&O funds, decreased capital funds, and so ESSER was also supposed to help purchase things that would have been purchased out of those, and seems that's kind of going a little bit by the wayside, and it's okay, how is this COVID related? And that is COVID related, but we'll see as we go.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Alexa?
Hello. I just have a brief update for you today. I updated our dashboard as of yesterday's numbers, and we had 25 cases district-wide. So I think we've seen our Omicron peak here in the district. Looks like we peaked back on the 20th with 90 cases. So we kind of rode the wave, and things are going pretty well right now. Our metrics for our county have also kind of started to plateau. Our cases per 100,000 last week did go down, but our percent positivity did increase a little bit. So we're hanging in there and doing pretty well. Last I spoke to you, we hadn't found out yet that the county was unable to provide us with tests anymore, so we're not able to do our testing events anymore at Mile High. But luckily the county has set up testing events Monday through Friday from 8 to 5:30 p.m., so all day at Pioneer Park. So we're sending families there if they need to get tested. So we are able to have enough tests to continue our pooled testing programs that we have, and then also test symptomatic staff to hopefully help keep staff coming to school. So that was pretty brief. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
How are we doing with staffing in general?
Staffing
as related to positive COVID tests?
Yeah, it's been challenging for sure. And a lot of times our sub positions don't get filled. So our staff has really stepped up and helped cover where we need it. Sometimes that means no specials. That means shifting people around. So we have had some staffing challenges. Discovery Gardens was hit particularly hard because they're such a small staff, and it basically wiped almost all their staff out at this location a couple weeks ago. So yeah, we're definitely seeing staffing challenges, but we're able to make it work.
Alexa, are they seeing any specific, or are you hearing any specific things about student mental health now as we're kind of hopefully coming out of this latest wave, like student mental health being impacted on a greater level than in the past?
I probably defer to Marty or Joe on that. I'm pretty in the weeds on COVID, and so I don't spend a lot of time looking at social emotional learning.
Okay.
So the question is, overall mental health, how are we doing as a district?
Yeah, or how are we seeing some of the things I've been reading say that principals are reporting issues with students that never showed up on their radar before.
Yeah.
Parents are asking more questions.
Yeah.
Saying
I
their
think
students.
we have Stephanie in the audience here who's seeing it firsthand every day, and
Okay.
I think she can
Okay.
respond to that if you're okay with that, Joe.
Yeah.
Sorry but yes, we are seeing students needing more support. And that is really where we started our focus at the beginning of this year as a district. And at Abaya Judd, for example, we never had any mental health person on our campus on a full-time basis. We only had someone 4 hours a day on a Friday previously. And our district came up with a plan, and we have great people.
Right.
So right now, I have someone on my campus Monday through Thursday, the entire school day. And so we are able to refer more students for support. And I'll tell you what we're focusing on is, so it's very similar to academic support where you have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. We're really focusing on that tier 1 support district-wide right now. Getting those counselors into the classrooms and having big conversations and large groups conversations, and then they break into small groups, so we do lunch bunches. And we're seeing that at all levels where we're really focusing on that tier 1 support. Our character coaches at the elementary are helping support that. And then we're figuring out who needs the tier 2 support, which may be the small groups, like I was saying, the lunch bunches, or maybe coming in for a 3-4 group session kind of thing if students are having similar issues. And then we've got our tier 3 support, which is like the one-on-one. So we have put a lot of thought and a lot of money, honestly, into this, and a lot of training. The training has been huge. We had Beth done on our campus just right before Christmas break, and we did trauma training with our staff, and I know she's going around to different schools, but even though Beth Dunn was on my campus in December, we invited everybody over. So there was more people that were able to attend that training than just a BIA people. So we have a really global look at it, and we're hitting really every student is being touched by it in some way, shape, or form, but the level that they get touched is up to, what the kid needs.
Yeah.
So it's very, does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I really appreciate the effort that you've all made in this regards. I guess a question I'd ask Brian, if you can tell us from the survey so far, is if parents are coming through as that one of their top priorities for use of this ESSER money?
Yes.
Potentially, okay.
Yeah, it's equal in the ranking with technology, filling in the gaps. It's right there, and I think we're probably leading the way in resources.
Yeah.
And I really have to commend Kelly and the instructional coaches and Jesse, our student well-being coordinator, who are bringing these trainings to our staff. February 22nd is our next in-service. There's going to be offerings for our staff during that. The Beth Dunn traveling show, and Jesse is recording those and then sharing it with staff who can't be there. We have really ramped it up, and Jesse has done an amazing job of coordinating those efforts.
It's a program that's really being built, but I would say PUSD is a model. I would say people are asking us how we do that because we have, even before the pandemic, we had probably put more resources into it than most, and certainly since.
Okay. Thank you. And again, I really appreciate all the work that the administrative team has done in this area and in helping our students get the support they need and our families get the support they need.
Can I just add something on the COVID topic, going back to that? We continue to, the principals call Alexa to continue to really brainstorm and target, when we're seeing an issue in a classroom. So for instance, last week we had a classroom that just kept having positive after positive, and we just, it seemed like no matter what we did, we could not, get it under control. So they work with Alexa to brainstorm more mitigation, and last week we decided to ask those parents to keep their kiddos home for at-home learning. However, we offered opportunity if they wanted to, if they had to bring their kiddo to school, we understand they might have to do that. And then this week we're having a staffing issue at Lincoln Preschool, and so again we're saying, you can keep your kiddos at home or you can bring them here to the Washington site. So we continue to just target small populations and really try to provide that flexibility for families, because we know this is, difficult to suddenly have to have your child at home.
Thank you.
Anything else for Alexa? Thank you very much, Alexa. All right. Budget. Brian?
Can I kick a few things first before you
If you want to hit
jump
the
into it?
proactive budgeting.
Proactive budgeting is all about balancing salaries, programming, and class size. We've been doing this philosophy for 7 or 8 years. We're getting pretty good at it. We had a 4-hour meeting with principals this morning. There was some heavy talk there. This was a highlight. This was a silver lining. Our budget is again in good shape, and this is the 23 budget that we're looking at. Now, we get way ahead of this in PUSD, and so this is the first look at it. And then, as board members know, we spend the next month sharing with board members and answering questions and helping you see deeply what this process looks like and what this budget looks like. It doesn't look a lot different than the last few budgets. We've kind of gotten into a groove with how that works, but you know, we know that if we don't take care of salaries, programs, and class sizes equally, if we drop one of those legs, we falter. We lose students, or we lose families, or we lose staff. And so it's been working for us. I feel like we've done well with retention of students, staff, and families, and maybe better than others in the state of Arizona. So I'll say that this budget we're going to look at, it's not in stone. The next step is, again, the board members will come and take a look at it over the next month, but then we ask for a philosophical approval at our next meeting, March 1st, which will allow us to offer contracts to our staff. And the timing of that's very important in this competitive world right now. And that's served us extremely well in the last several years. So just a couple highlights. We're suggesting a 5% raise or more, and we'll get into the details on that. It took us probably the better part of a decade to go through every salary schedule and do an industry standard study and bring it up to par, and now we're not at par anymore, right? But the fact that we did that work over the last few years, this year we're able to look at every salary schedule and say, are we competitive? And I got to tell you, Clark Tenney and Brian Moore have gone through an extensive process. They're still working on it. This whole thing's not in stone yet. But comparing and seeing what we realistically can do for each of those areas so that we can remain competitive. So we're in a great place that we're able to look at all of those in 1 year and just stay in the game. We will be dipping into carry forward again. We've been gently doing that over the last few years. We don't like leaving money on the table. We like putting it in the hands of our students and our teachers. And so we're confident that we can dip a little harder into that this year for a variety of reasons. But I think it's a good budget. We use the same worksheet that we use every year, and we plug in different numbers. So that's what we're going to ask Brian to go through now. And unless there's any initial questions, we'll dive in.
I think you did such a fantastic job. I'll just say as presented.
Yeah.
No.
Not quite on this one.
Okay, excellent. Really, the proposed budget package worksheet, really, the left-hand column falls into 3 areas. Increased cost to M&O, decreased cost M&O, increased revenue, and decreased revenue. And so Mr. Torres kind of blew up each section, so we'll kind of go through each of them. So first, the increased cost of M&O. These are things that happen every year. We will have an insurance increase. We will not know that until, I think their meeting is next week. I'm estimating 7%. If it's a percent higher, every percent is $45,000. If it's a percent lower, then that will lower that by $45,000.
We were 7% last year, so
it was 7% last year. We had a meeting with the KIRS representative. PUSD had larger claims, but as a whole, KIRS as a pool was very healthy. This is our 3rd year, so we will kind of get individually rated. So they'll do a blanket recommendation, and for districts that have a little bit harder claims, it may be a percent higher than that recommendation. We'll find out what Prescott's is next week. Minimum wage will continue to happen every January 1st, which does affect our contract services, our custodial, and our food service. And every year it's about $35,000. So that's that line item. The next 2, as Mr. Howard mentioned, Mr. Tenney has been working really hard on salary schedule placement. We are recommending taking care of our current employees with a 5% raise. Those placement schedules also need to be competitive for new hires. So what we need to do when we have new placement schedules is we need to look at where an employee is and where potentially an employee coming in new would be placed, and we don't want any employee to be leapfrogged. So a new employee would make more than an employee that is here. So I analyzed every single employee, classified, certified, looked at the 5% raise, looked at the new placement schedule, and there are some employees that will receive higher than a 5%, so that they're at least at the level where that new employee would come, and that new employee would not be making more than them. So on the classified staff, it's about 60 classified employees, and that will be about 59,000 above that 5%. And on a certified placement schedule, it's about 27,000 above what they would receive for, and that's actually, that's 5 employees in the certified side. So those are the increased cost M&O, and I will entertain any questions before we go to the next chunk.
There's just two things that I'd be curious to learn more about. With the minimum wage effect, obviously those numbers affect people that make minimum wage. Where is it calculated in the budget, the effects on people that make, you know, $16 an hour and increasing that in order to keep up with minimum wage?
So with the new placement schedule for classified, we're going from 5 grades, we call them, and we're now going to call them not grades but levels, and we're stretching it to 10. With our aggressive raises over the last 7 years, our current employees' minimum wage really has not affected them as much, because our raises have kept them above what that, this year was a 5.6% increase as of January 1st. So our raises have kept our current employees above the impact of minimum wage going up. And so really when it comes to the numbers in here, you'll see the 5% raise incorporates the impact on current employees for minimum wage. Did that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
It's a good question.
Like, I understand that because we're already paying above minimum wage because of those raises that have happened historically, that the minimum wage increase does not affect many PUSD employees. And I guess what I'm proposing is that it affects everybody, because when minimum wage goes up, then the
Correct.
expectation.
Yeah, it's a good question, because you don't want to be raising the bottom and then you get this flattening.
Right.
And I think what Brian's trying to say is because of the 5% increase, that they are moving up as well as the minimum wage.
So,
But it is the classified restructure is going to look at that, help with that a little bit, going from 5 grades to 10 levels.
Okay.
so Sarah, in previous years, before a reclassification of the classified placement schedule, what we would do would change the placement schedule for the classified. Every level would get bumped up equal to that minimum wage increase or percentage on January 1st.
Right.
And if anybody, once again, would end up getting leapfrogged, they would get a higher raise. So we dealt with it duly. In this year, the reclassification proposal for placement takes care of that 100%.
Okay. And related to that, the other thing I heard was the, when you're ensuring that there is no leapfrogging, it was to at least the level of the new employee.
Correct.
Does that mean that there are currently situations where staff that have some tenure with PUSD will be making the same as new staff?
Yes.
Okay. And how?
Very few.
Very few.
Very few, okay.
And we've looked specifically, it doesn't happen a lot with the classified. It will, those that it will happen to, they're going to get higher than a 5% raise. So hopefully they'll look at it and say, okay, someone may be coming in with years of experience and the level and maybe making more, but PUSD honored me and I got a 9% raise to make sure that someone coming in with the same level of experience and that level of the position wasn't making more.
2 things. Not every district or organization cares about leapfrogging. That's been a priority for our board since before I was superintendent. It's always been a discussion that we take the time and the money to make sure we don't do that. So I think it's a great value that we do. The second thing, because I can't help myself, is the minimum wage that we've been doing for several years is unfunded.
Yeah.
Not one penny from the state of Arizona, not one penny. It's always come out from somewhere else from our budget that could have gone to other parts of the stool, like salaries, programs, or class size. So every district has had to do that over the last few years, and not a lot of people talk about it, but there was no help for that. There was no additional budget for that, ever.
On the certified side, there are some teachers that are with us the last 1 or 2 years, and we are proposing to have a little buffer from a new teacher coming to the district with no experience on that first step, and having a little monetary difference, so a teacher with 3 years experience with us and a new teacher coming in would not be the same. Any other questions? All right. This is an interesting part, decreases to M&O. First time I know in history, we're actually having a decrease in our rate to the Arizona State Retirement System because it is so healthy. So it is going down by about 1/4%, and that is how much the employer and employee has to contribute. And it will save us $41,890. Yay. Also, a decreased cost, when we went to Kairos, one of the biggest changes for health insurance was employees that had sibling or family insurance would have seen a 70% plus increase in the cost of their insurance, because YUBT, the trust that we were with, our self-insured, was so undercharging for dependent child and dependent family insurance. So we decided we would subsidize employees' family and sibling insurance over a period of 3 years. This is the last year, and this year's impact on that of subsidizing was about $50,000. We don't have to spend that next year. It would be next year, anyone with sibling or family coverage, they will be paying the full price for that dependent insurance. But we have phased it over a 4-year period. The 4th year, the insurance is solely their cost. Which is another thing, I think, as an organization and valuing our employees, we couldn't hit them with that big increase all at once. Okay, questions on decrease? Next one's pretty easy.
This is our raise from Arizona this year.
There it is. Here's the thing, is in August, they say minimum wage, because of the consumer price index, they said it's 5.6%, your minimum wage needs to go up by 5.6%. It's kind of a guess because the year hasn't finished. They are estimating that inflation last year was about 7%. But we get, on how much our student is worth, that index or 2%, whichever one's lower. So, we are 5% away from what it really was, but we are going to see about a 446,700 something increase in funds, and that's with flat enrollments. We are not expecting increased revenue from our enrollment. If it happens, great. We are in current year funding, so we will be able to realize that budget capacity. And at the same time, decreased revenue, we are saying the flat enrollment, we're not going to say we're going to have any less revenue with students. And hopefully next year it's the increase.
I know you're really good at math in your head, so I'm just out of curiosity, if that was inflation at 7% per student, what would that number look like?
It would be about 1.5 million.
1.3.
1.3?
That was my head math.
That was your head math? Hold on a second. I can tell you,
we get these questions a lot.
yeah.
I'm faster and less accurate.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. 1.5 million. Hey, what did I say? 1.5 million.
That's why you're the CFO?
That's what it would be. Marty knew that before I even said. 1.5.
Yeah, Marty has it exactly right. She just doesn't tell anyone.
Okay, questions on the increased, decreased costs and revenue? All right, we'll go to the middle column. How do I get to the middle column?
Down at the bottom.
This is technology.
There you go.
Okay, this is our suggested raises, 5% by each category. It's $1 million.
Pretty similar to last year.
It's about, it's about 250,000 per percent. And then, Joe, do you want to talk about the position part here?
I have a question on the
Yes,
raises.
ma'am.
I know that we're looking at using approximately 1.2 million of our carry forward. What happens in subsequent years? Will we have enough carry forward to be able to sustain those raises? I don't want to give staff raises and have to take them back.
Yep, that's our golden rule.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So yes, we believe that what carry forward we have will sustain this.
all right.
We believe we're carrying, we don't, or we'd be carrying too much forward and not using, and not putting it on the table.
Yeah.
So we feel confident and safe that this is good.
Probably the most conservative when it
Yeah,
comes
I
to, and we have safety nets where we can see what our enrollment is, and dust settles, and then have conversations. We won't know exactly what our carry forward will be for this year until the annual financial report in September, but we do know what it is for going into this year. And we do have other safety nets that I usually argue with Joe about this, and I'm comfortable.
He didn't argue as much this year.
We're in a good place.
And just related to that, I noticed that there's no student estimated increase in terms of enrollment. Is that conservative? Is that optimistic? Is that?
It's conservative based on a lot of experience, based on probably a lot of people in this room that know and understand the demographics that are coming and going in Prescott. We're not growing students right now.
But are we losing?
Not that we're seeing.
Okay.
Yeah. And
But there are checks and balances if we're wrong. Arizona made a decision 5 or 6 years ago to force us to guess each year. So that's what we're doing. That's what current year funding does.
Yeah.
So, but we're pretty good at it. Knock on wood.
Yeah, and like I said, we have safety nets that when the dust settles and we do see, let's say we do see that, we do have 50 students more. Well, 50 times what a student's weight is, plays into, well, we didn't have to use 1.2 million. And, this year our carry forward did go up. And so we'll kind of see that, and then in budgeting next year, we may have to say, okay, we may be able to give this raise and not this because we gave a little bit more than we should have last year. But we're in a place where we have those safety nets that we could spread any decisions over multiple years if that target was wrong. And I think we could recapture more kids from pre-COVID. We are up kids this year, but we haven't gotten all of them back.
So this is the program part of our budget. Actually, we worked with Connie last year with the Roof Street Theater. And we believe that's a position that'll pay for itself. That's a person that will bring acts into Hendricks Auditorium and Roof Street Theater and hopefully bring revenue in.
So this would be the cost of that position if they didn't bring any revenue. But revenue will offset this and go into that civic fund that Mr. Howard was talking about.
CNC is Community Nature Center. We recently had a presentation on that. We're talking with the city about doing a partnership, a split of 2 positions over at the Community Nature Center. We're also talking with the city about possibly giving us a reduction in what we pay for school resource officer. And so that offset is applied here in that situation. There's more discussion to be done with the city, and so right now that's a guesstimate there. District admin restructure, we look at this each year. Kelly Bradstreet is moving along, and so we're doing some things to make sure we have all the support we need in the district office. Part of that is working with Sarah, who when we look at her industry standards, she's low. And so we're giving her more duties. Another part of that is looking at Clark Tenney, who we brought over and is doing an HR job and he's also doing a lot of district administration. So this is a inexpensive way to move him into an assistant superintendent position. So we're looking at that. District-wide nursing, 8-10 years ago, when all we did was cut our budgets, we were cutting nurses. And we've been able to revive some of that. Lincoln is the only school that does not have a registered nurse. That's pretty rare in districts. I'd say it's kind of like our social emotional program, where we've made it a priority, and we've seen during the pandemic that it's probably more important than ever. And so, but we also believe that it brings parents confidence that we do have registered nurses. It's a nice piece to have in schools. Let's see, instructional coach expansion. We're about a half a coach short in terms of making sure we have a full-time coach in every school. Part of that's because we created the instructional outreach program and we've dedicated one person's half-time to that. That program's going very well and expanding. And so we'd like to make sure our coaching team is still full there. And then PUSD everywhere. I think Rachel gave a report last board meeting and talked about staff that she'll need. This year's a study year, and she's kind of running a pilot right now, but that's staffing that she thinks that we'll need to make that program robust. So those are, every year we do have position restructures, and we're looking at expanding our programs. It's not a lot, it's $350,000.
All right, and then we get to the summary column. Just basically summarizes increase, decreases, raises, and projections. And ultimately, the increased revenue and the costs, whatever that difference is what we're saying we're going to use carry forward at 1.2 million, so the net is 0. As Mr. Howard said, we have had that line item of using carry forward every year that I've been in my position, and every year our carry forward has gone up. Any other questions? This is the preliminary budget package presentation.
And again,
Okay.
Start writing those questions down, and our job the next month is to make you feel comfortable about what all of this looks like. And then officially we don't adopt the full budget. We do it philosophically so we can do contracts in March, but until summer when it's required by law. So we do quite a bit more than we are supposed to do, but I think it's just so that the board can be really in the know and the public can be really in the know. And also a lot of it is for our staff to hopefully sigh a breath of relief that we're still trying to get towards the state average, which is short. And then the national average I won't talk about because it's 10 grand difference. So
it also helps.
We're doing the best that we have with what we have.
Oh, absolutely. And the timeline helps a lot with vacancies because we get to have our vacant positions posted. And it's not after everyone else in the area has been able to interview and hire. There are times where we couldn't hire until July, I remember.
Yes.
So.
Well,
All right.
I appreciate you, as a public entity, taking care of the staff in the way that we're trying to. It could always be bigger and better, but I think utilizing that carry forward money in a way that's responsible and helps to show our staff that we appreciate them, that trickles down to the students and helps the students learn and grow from caring and supportive staff that realize that they're appreciated. So I think it's a good approach.
Just to make sure that I am interpreting this crystal clear, if the funding per student were tracking with inflation instead of stuck at 2%, then we would have to use 1.1 million less of carry forward money for just sustaining. Essentially what I see is we're sustaining what we have.
You are right on, and that
Okay.
it was very good. You could be a CFO. Because you're exactly right. We would only have to use $100,000 worth of our carry forward. And we could say, hey, we have such safety nets that,
Right,
hey, let's still do
Maybe we
1.2
could
million.
build and-
We could be
right.
given a 9% raise.
right.
And I'd complain about it a lot more, but for the better part of a decade, we got zero.
That is,
And until there was a lawsuit against the state of Arizona that said, you have to give inflation.
I think that was in 2015,
Okay.
right around there. And I don't think we got inflation all the way since 2005.
Copy that. And then that's it. That's the only question I have.
Okay. It's complicated. It takes a while to, but the one-on-one meetings we have are really helpful to get understanding on all these little pieces.
Lots of time to figure it out and
Yeah.
ask any question you can think of.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Brian, thanks,
welcome.
Joe.
Thank you.
All right. Now we get to talk about the aggregate expenditure limit. Go for it.
So this is a tricky topic, and it's an unfortunate situation, and not every school district's talking about it. And we'll just be as straight up as we can about it. But what I'll say is, the danger of talking about it and doing guesswork is creating a panic, because there's stuff to panic about if our state takes $5.8 million away from us, 4.8.
4.8.
That was already allocated to us. Now, this is confusing, so bear with us. We're going to do a PowerPoint and the whole thing. But this is money that was allocated for this current school year. And we're going to talk to you and try to educate people about a 1979-80 law that was put together by the legislature in Arizona at the time that's still being used, even though a lot of variables have come along to throw it completely off. Now, you haven't probably heard much about it because in the Great Recession, in 2007 they waived it, 2008 they waived it, maybe 2012 they waived it. Nobody heard about it because it was a no-brainer. In my opinion, it's a no-brainer this time. But it's tied up in politics, and it's tied up with how the legislature feels about Prop 208. And so I won't get into whether that's right or wrong. You can decide that for yourself. But it's putting us in a really, really tough position. And I am, and superintendents and boards are reluctant to talk about it because we're afraid that it will scare our staff off. And although I think in Prescott we are super blessed to have much less turnover and a much more stable staff, other superintendents across the state are very, very worried that this is going to, their folks are going to go, what, my job's in question? I'm leaving. So just want to get that out there, that we need to be careful about that. So we're not going to tell you tonight all the answers because we don't have them. But we're going to tell you the situation and why we're in it and what can be done about it. And we're going to give you our best guess on when we run out of money. And I don't think that that's something that Joe Howard or Brian Moore or Marty Reed is going to say, oh, you know what, the way we're going to handle that is shut down or whatever it is. I think there's a timeline that we're going to share with you guys. And if we get to that timeline and the legislature has not done their job and helped us and left us in this lurch, then we need to get together and talk about how we finish the school year with the amount of money that we have left. So there's a lot to it. I think this will help explain a lot, and please ask questions. We're going to go one slide at a time, don't you think, Brian? And
Yep.
Just allow you to ask questions. And there will continue to be questions after this meeting. So
Before the first slide, to piggyback on something that Joe said about this is money that we were allocated, budgeted. This is money that we've taxed for. We have this money in our treasurers, in the county treasurers.
it's been collected.
It's been collected. This is also the 301 money that the 1% sales tax has already been collected. So this money is here. It's just, this says we can't spend it. So where did the aggregate expenditure limit come from? Like Mr. Howard said, it's 4 decades ago level. Was placed on all levels of local government via a referral to voters by the legislator. There was a baseline 40 years ago. Established an annual growth factor that the state would look at every single year in March and basically say, this is the capacity in that area that you can spend. Charter schools do not have to worry about this.
What?
So, not a single charter school has to have this conversation. Also, the cities, counties, community college limits can be increased on an individual basis by voters of that jurisdictions. We don't have that option. So it's 4 decades ago. I did some research, and I think it was spurred on about something that happened in California, and this was a reaction 40 years ago that we didn't want it to happen in Arizona, and it has stayed in effect the last 40 years. So I'll pause after every slide. The history is a little blurry. I don't have as many answers, but if there's any questions, please ask. All right, how is it set? It's based on adjusting every year from that 40 years ago. Basically what they do on March 1st is they look at the previous years, or the current year, because it's March of that year, and they look at the 100th day count, and they end up setting what that limit is across the whole state, saying as a state of Arizona, this is the number of students on that 100th day, and then they make that aggregate spending limit on March 1st for the upcoming year. Not too sure about the 1986 approvers approved adding 10%. I think that was it was getting close, and the voters have said, hey, let's increase it by 10%, and the voters were able to not have this happen. That's information. Do you have any information on that, Joe?
Well, I was just going to say back then we were in the bottom 20, not the bottom one.
That's
not the bottom one.
This was, we weren't second to last or last funded for education. We were top 25. Federal funds, there are specific funds that this aggregate spending limit does apply to. There are certain ones that it does not apply to. Federal, state funds, cash funds, like Mr. Howard said, are when we rent buildings out, that's a civic fund, are excluded. Also, local approved funds like overrides, bonds, and carry forwards are excluded.
We don't need to worry about that.
Yeah. Our override is going to go down by 1/3 next year, which we did attend to last budget cycle last year and said we're keeping all of that 5.1% raise from the 2015 override, and that was part of everyone's raise, and we gave a 4% in September.
Does that limit go up by the cost of living? Or is it just permanently set at a certain number?
It's a formula. They use the 100th day.
It's really complex.
There are certain things, and the reason we're in this position is there are some legislative decisions that have been made that has increased our spending capacity, which may not have been looked at as closely on the impact of the aggregate spending limit, and we'll get into those on the future slides. On that previous slide, it said what was excluded. I'll just tell you what really is included. All of our M&O budget, our main budget, 87-85% salaries and benefits. All of our DAA, which they've been putting back, and all of what's called the Classroom Site Fund, which is the Prop 301 money that teachers receive, which last budget year we said is 100% teacher compensation. Those are the 3 areas that count against our aggregate spending limit.
And just so you can visualize it, M&O is that whole budget worksheet we just went over.
Yeah.
DAA is not in there, and 301's not in there.
So what piece of the pie in percentage is excluded from this?
You know what, I think you'll see when we get to what our numbers are, and because it shows all of our budget expenditures, what's excluded, what is our applicable expenditures, and what we have to reduce. So really what they look at is M&O, DAA, and that Prop 301 money across the whole state. And it is $7.1 billion. They set last March the aggregate spending limit of $6 million. Now, that left us $1.1 million short. Oh, billion, yeah, I'm sorry, million, that would have been a whole different conversation. That's 1/4 of our allocation. So we're $1.1 billion short, which is a 16.09% reduction to every district's applied expenditure limit, the M&O, DAA, and Prop 301.
We're not short the money, we just can't spend it.
Oh, it's there. It's like, I get my paycheck and it goes to my bank, but I can't spend 16.09% because it's unconstitutional. So the three major contributing factors: enrollment counts. This is where I'm unsure about the black and white of the formula, but since they looked at last year's 100th day, PUSD was down 180 students. We got those students back. Well, we got some of them back, which means compared to last 100th day to what we put forward as a proposed budget and that current year funding, we have more spending capacity than what was represented in the 100th day last year. That happened across the whole state. So how much flexibility they had to look and say, these students will come back as we get through COVID and vaccines and boosters. The enrollment count played large into more spending capacity, aggregate spending limit saying you can't spend it.
Yeah, just another way to look at that is COVID hit enrollment, not just across Arizona, across the country. I mean, it's just a fact of life. And that threw this formula off. But we're hearing from folks down at the state that that's the reason, because we didn't get our students back. But I'd call that rhetoric.
That is it. Otherwise, we'd be under the aggregate spending limit. Recent funding additions, we'll get into some of those, but there has been over the last 3 years an increase in funds that we have, including inflation. Every time we apply 2%, that $400,000 that you saw in increased revenue, that's increased spending capacity. So our aggregate limit should go up. So, and then also the big one, and we'll get into a slide, was in 2000, Prop 301 passed, and there was specific language in that passing by the voters that it would not count against the aggregate spending limit. It did sunset, and the legislation did renew it, and did specifically have language that it would count against the aggregate spending limit, and that hit that 1.1 billion, I think on the slide, 800 million of it was solely, this was the first year that 301 counted against the aggregate spending limit, and that was an $800 million increase. So some of the recent decisions which have been good, how much they have been considered with the aggregate spending limit. The 20 by 2020 increased spending $1 billion in over 3 years. Also, special education funding has been looked at. There were tweaks to it just last year, which also in this year's budget increased our spending capacity because they did tweak some of the category. It's the Group B weights, and they also added some funding for gifted, which was never there before. That also increased our spending capacity, and it put us more over the aggregate spending limit.
Imagine if we didn't do that $1 billion for 20 by 2020, we'd be probably more than $20,000 below the national teaching average.
Yep.
I mean, we probably wouldn't have any staff.
Also, the restoration of district additional assistant, that's our capital. When I first took over this position, I think our allocation, they said you can have $1.7 million, but then we're going to take away $1.5 million of it. It actually made me calculate how much the district could have and then have a subtraction of what they're going to take away. We are now pretty much restored with district additional assistance. We're at that 1.7 million mark. Imagine that across the whole state. That is that spending capacity, and that also has hurt us to the tune of 1.1 billion over the aggregate spending limit.
And that brings our DAA back to 2008 numbers.
Yep.
For real.
And once again, the big one, this is the first year of the Classroom Site Fund, or 301, is in that new legislative renewal. And I think everything I already said. It's not exempt, and it's $800 million. Thank goodness that they renewed it, because most of it went to teachers, and last year we said it's all going to go to teachers, but now it counts. So, questions? I can go back. Okay. Issues with the limit, we're not the same as 40 years ago. Just in 1979, special education law and IDA were just in its infancies. We have had increases to our K-3 funding. There's a separate Group B line item that brings, I think, $180,000 because K-3 costs more to educate. ELL increased funding. JTED wasn't part back then. So that just as a state increased the amount of spending with JTED districts, or CTED now. Cost of insurance, technology, other requirements outpaced inflation. These are all issues on a 40-year-old formula that they keep applying every March.
When you say, excuse me, I don't want to butt in right now, but.
No, every slide, butt in.
When you say when they, could you repeat the last thing you said? It was too fast for me to process.
Insurance and technology.
Oh, just about the 40 years ago,
Yeah.
So 40 years ago, the legislatures created the aggregate spending limit.
Okay, so they
Being
were
legislators.
the state of Arizona.
Yes,
Okay, the state, the legislature.
yeah,
Okay.
and we keep reapplying it every year
Okay,
for the last 40 years. But these are the issues because we're not the same as 40 years ago.
yeah, right.
But we were actually funded, now 40 years ago, we were funded about mid-pack in the country. We were doing, that's before we started cutting taxes all the time.
Well, that's the complexity of it. 40 years ago, and you'll see a chart, I think it's from 2010, where the state spending was and where the aggregate limit is and where they crossed. 40 years ago, we were well-funded, and it was decisions about cutting taxes in the 80s and the 90s, and it shifted us to the bottom of funding education. And this is the chart. So since 2012, the aggregate spending limit is the blue line. Spending, and once again, that's spending subject to that limit, M&O, DAA, and Prop 301, is the orange line. The crossover is this year. The interesting part, if you look, last March they decreased the aggregate spending limit. The bar actually went down. That's where Mr. Howard's enrollment comment comes in. They looked at a year that was not a normal year. They looked at a year of enrollments with a lot of homeschooling, a lot of private schooling, and they decreased it. So we are now at the point, is there a laser?
Yeah, they're red.
Oh, you should have shown me that. This is the aggregate spending limit. This is the state spending capacity. The difference is $1.1 billion. It would be not $1.1 billion if they actually kept it flat, but we still would be under and still be facing, but not at 1.1 billion. Questions on this one? All right. This is our impact. Please ask questions. Every single expenditure on our proposed budget, federal grants, state grants, cash accounts, M&O, DAA, Classroom Site Fund 301, all add up to about $55 million. We have excluded funds, federal funds, state funds, Title I, Special Ed, Title IV, that make up 20 million of that 55 million. we're not capped on that. We have sources that are also excluded, our override, our carry forward, and we do receive tuition from about 6 districts that are elementary only or transportation only districts. Those are excluded as well. So so it's 29.9, I think, million is what we're held to for that aggregate spending limit, which is all of our M&O. It's all of our DAA and it's all of our 301. That's what we budgeted, that's what we taxed for, and that's what we had allocated in the 1% sales tax increase for the 301. So unfortunately, we are held to the 16.09% reduction, which means we need to reduce our spending by 4.8 million.
Well, let me clarify. If the legislature has till March 1st to waive this, if they don't, then we have till April 1st to revise our budget. So that's not a fact right now. That's a threat and a fear right now.
Questions on this one?
Also, that March 1st date cannot be extended. It's absolutely set in concrete.
They do have options of doing partial waiver, full waiver, percentage waiver, but no action is the 4.8.
Takes a 2/3 vote by the legislature.
It takes a 2/3 vote.
Yep.
House and Senate.
But they've done it at least 3 times that we know of,
Yeah, I knew at least 2008 and 12 of it.
without it being an issue.
Right.
Okay. All right. This is weedy. Okay, so we have 29.9 million that were held M&O DA 301 money. I estimate that about 33.4 of the year will be remaining as of March 1st. Just number of day calculations from March 1st to June 30th. I project, now we are 4 weeks from March 1st, so I took the amount of money we've spent in M&O, DAA, and we did a distribution of 301 money to $2,000 each of the teachers in December, and then I took utilities, the things that I really know we're going to spend over the next month. And I estimate on March 1st we will have spent 17.4 million of that 29, which means we have 12.5 million left of the 29 without a reduction. Make it all the way to June 30th. But we have to reduce that 12.5 by 4.8, which is a 38.4% reduction in our spending capacity. We have the money in the bank. We just can't spend 38.4% of it. The math is there, 12.5, spending capacity reduced by 4.8 leaves us with $7.7 million worth of spending that we can out of M&O, DA, and 301. That's the black and white numbers. And how much then do we have, are we planning on spending from March 1st to June 30th? So that's the next slide. Questions on this?
Have they ever done this before?
At least twice, and I didn't even know about it as an administrator because they overrode it without even, I think, advertising it. 2008 and 12, and I think maybe 2007.
Right, because if you do it, if you don't vote for it, I mean, it's not just PUSD, it's going to be the biggest disaster we've ever seen in Arizona education. And if we think 49th in the nation looks bad, I mean, you know, if there were 10 more states, we'd be 59th, but it's, I don't know how, I mean, a lot of superintendents are talking like I am right now. They can't finish sentences about this.
Just from a magnitude standpoint, 2008, when they did this, the difference between the aggregate and the actual spending capacity was 110 million. This is 10 times worse than that.
What's the word I'm looking for. What's the chatter going on in the state legislature about this? Is there any?
Until the lawsuit in Prop 208 is resolved, they can't talk about it.
They cannot talk
Well,
about it.
that's just what.
Doesn't
They
it-
say they cannot talk about it.
Doesn't it seem, why, who says they can't talk about it?
The legislators.
They do.
Oh, they do. You
The
mean
legislators.
district over here, rule, don't talk about it.
Yeah.
District over here.
The difference between the other times earlier and this time is there's Prop 208, and there are people who are very upset that the voters approved that.
Uh-huh.
And there seems to be a chance that if this is held over our head, that maybe Prop 208 will free up. That's the nicest way I can say that.
And the simplest way that I can say is Prop 208 isn't even issue until next year. This is this year. This is a decision that can be made this year, absent of any ramifications of 208. So.
That's probably why they planned it that way, you think? I mean,
I have no comment.
yeah, okay.
I think the chatter is, let's find ways to ban books. Let's find ways to not teach our children what, or tell our teachers how to teach and what to teach. Let's find ways to subtract more money through vouchers into other private schools. They're ignoring the issue, is what they're doing. Many of them, not all of them, but they're ignoring the issue. They're not doing their job. And there's a political benefit for some of them to do that. And that's why that 2/3 number is so intimidating, because we have to get 2/3 of the legislature to approve this in order for it to not become an issue.
I know it's very elementary, but the Constitution also says that the job of the legislature is to adequately fund schools.
Right.
And I don't hear that coming up right now, but I hear a lot of, but this is constitutional. This was a legislatively created formula that is seemingly imperfect. There seemingly are a lot of problems with it from back in '79.
And charter schools don't have to worry about it.
Right.
What about charter schools?
They
Does
don't
not
have to
affect
worry
charter
about it.
schools.
Does not affect charter schools.
Oh, please, help me, Lord.
Okay, go to the next one. Let me talk about March 1st through June 30th expenditures. So our remaining funds after the reduction is 7.7 million. Right now, if we don't hire a single new position or open a new purchase order, because when we open up a purchase order, it encumbers that money, it earmarks it. It's like it's spent until we close that purchase order and then it frees it up. So right now, taking out utilities through March 1st, we have about $12 million worth of encumbered M&O from March 1st to June 30th. Out of that 12 million, 5.8 are salaries and wages.
And benefits?
1.7 benefits.
Okay.
Add those two together, it's about 7.5 million salaries and benefits. That means, the other 3.5 are POs to repair the buildings, they're things that are deemed essential. We are so good at spending the minimal. So we do have about 75% of our DAA encumbered. These are things that we have open POs that we are going to get invoices for. And we have $3.8 million worth of Prop 301 encumbered. That is teacher compensation, and I calculate it to be above the $2,000 in December. I believe their payment in June would be $11,000. If all the encumbered money was spent with no additional POs, no additional anything to DAA or M&O, will be $8 million over what we can spend which will be $8 million over that 7.7 million.
Or $8 million short, is what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're talking about these kind of numbers, I know that the question I'm gonna ask feels like peanuts, certainly, but let's say the expenditure limit, it's waived. How much have we already lost as a district? And I know there's no hard and fast number on this, but in terms of your time, Brian, and just all of this planning, but you also mentioned like not opening any POs, not taking any action in terms of hiring right now, or like, have we already been affected financially by this?
I think it's more, I mean, this is something, Mr. Carter, you know, so we need to share. We need our public and staffs, not to scare them, but just to educate, because we do have contact power with our legislators. I think it's been more mental wear and tear. And that's really been kind of at the high level.
Well, you're humble, Brian, but I mean, we spent hours on it today with every one of our principals. And
I know.
That's what I mean. I mean,
Right,
we're
and
talking about
Brian
this
spent many hours figuring this stuff out. And
I was actually, during the presentations, Mr. Howard asked me to figure something out, and I worked on it all afternoon, and I still didn't get it where I can present it. But what I am going to do is, we have deemed essential things, and finding out what that magic week will be in which that 7.7 will no longer be expended. Utilities, fuel for our buses, internet, so our internet, our wide area network, our WAN, food service, custodial service, Prop 301, paying teachers that money. What else am I missing?
Fuel?
Fuel, natural gas, water, the utilities. Anyway, so I am doing it week by week of what those costs are. Week by week, what our payroll plus, we got to remember, for every dollar we pay out, it's about $1.20. That 20 extra percent is Medicaid, Arizona State Retirement System, blah, blah, blah. Also, planning on whatever happens, our health benefits are paid all the way through June 30th. Our employees need health benefits, plain and simple. So I am taking week by week by week by week, and what those costs are, adding it up. I think there's 15 factors, adding up every week, and finding that week when we hit 7.7 million. My guess, and I got down to wages. I got all the utilities and everything done. I got benefits. I just couldn't get through wages. Don't hold me to it. My guess is first or second week of April.
What is the mechanism for them to cut off funding?
well, that enter Tim Carter, and this is why he spoke up to us last week, because he's the guy who has to say to us, you can't spend this money.
Okay.
I mean, that's his point, and he had said to all of us, you should probably start talking with your boards about this, because if it happens, and he said very clearly, I don't want to create a panic, none of us want to create a panic, but he said, at some point I'm going to have to tell you, you can't spend that money.
So the county
Yes.
superintendent's office controls the money for all the districts in the
Yes.
county?
Yes,
primarily.
so everything we do, payroll to vouchers, which are checks, everything that we spend goes through the county every week, payroll every 2 weeks, to the point where if we have a fund, let's say Civic, we're a rental, and we have $10,000 in there, and we do a purchase order for $15,000. They cross-reference the fund, kicks back our voucher, because that fund doesn't have enough money, and we have to move the expenditure into a different fund. When we hit that 7.7 million, my guess is we won't have payroll or vouchers approved. Nothing will be sent back our way, because we have spent our allocation of the bank, the treasurer's office that we can, even though all the money is there.
So if the money is there and funding education is a constitutional law,
Requirement.
is there any way, and this is probably, I mean, this is probably not realistic, but would county superintendents band together and say, we're ignoring you, state legislature, we're spending the money, we're approving the district spending?
They'd be sent to jail.
Yeah,
Seriously.
Okay,
mean,
yeah,
I
and that's-
was in this meeting with Tim Carter yesterday, and he says he's not willing to go to jail.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what's the matter with Tim, but.
I understand. I understand. I'm just wondering where, you know, I know our community needs to push back. The people in the community need to be writing their legislators. They need to be calling them. We need people focused on this issue. But at the highest levels, or at the highest levels countywide, what kind of pushback is being put forward from those individuals? You know, we're a board and we can make it public in the newspaper that we are not happy about this. We can only do as citizens what citizens can do in contacting our legislature. I just hope there are people at higher levels that are willing to take a stand at some point.
I can tell you there's a lot of fear amongst my colleagues that I haven't seen any board meetings like this yet.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear to speak up. And I can get in later into why those fears are there. But there can be repercussions.
Our kids have gone through so much in the last 2 years, and they need more right now, not less. And it makes me very angry that our legislature would even consider making this kind of move. I cannot understand how they couldn't justify throwing a whole generation of kids under the bus.
I would just add that from what I'm seeing too, just about the focus of this district leadership team, but also like across our whole state, that it seems seems like even just the consideration is already hurting the progress that we talked about when we talked about ESSER funds and filling the gap and catching up on. So it's frustrating regardless of what decision is made down the line.
If your goal is to undermine public education, why not go for the knockout punch?
Yeah.
I think Nancy Hudson quoted me on, and I haven't heard anything that says, how can you have already taxed for it? The biggest thing that we are looked at as a public school, this is community schools, is every dollar we spend, we have to do it wisely because this is taxpayer. These are their schools. Misuse of taxpayer money is always on our mind. And we want to be stewards of that money. How on earth can we at the same time have money that's in the bank that we've taxed for and we can't spend it? How is that not misuse of taxpayer money? To the tune of, and once again, it's some of the sales tax. But that $4.8 million, the majority of it is already taxed for. I've already paid my property taxes. And 16.08% of it, as a district, we can't spend by me. How is that not misuse?
Is there any, it makes it sound like there's some evil cabal that has come up with this. Who else would come up with something like this? Who lives here in this state? It's just, it's embarrassing. It's evil.
Connie, I think it's that 40-year-old thing. What it is a product of decisions made in the past. It's reanalyzed and looked at every year, and it is adjusted.
Yeah.
What I don't understand, considering this doesn't link to Prop 208, because that isn't impacting this year, is how the first day that the legislature didn't reconvene, call for a vote and have 100% approval of the exemption for this year.
We originally heard from some of the legislative leaders that this would be the first item on the agenda, the first week of the legislative session. It would be taken care of, it'd be off the table, no problem. We're now within a month of that deadline, and
That, we first started talking about it in November, and the first story in the Courier was in November, and one of my colleagues said at the end of the story, I hope this doesn't become political. And it's
become political.
I guess I'm not surprised, though.
Well, I think this is a great opportunity for people in our community to step up and start supporting our schools even more than they already do. You know, write to your legislators, write to the state superintendent, write to the governor. Get your voices out there, I think.
We talked already a little bit about the annual timeline. The previous March before school year starts, they look at that 100th day, they look at spending, they set the aggregate spending limit. By November 1st, they know how many students have showed up. They do a projection of the 100th day. They project what that ultimate spending capacity is by all the districts across the state. If they project the spending capacity is above the aggregate limit, they have on November 1st to put out a report. It's called a Budge Ag, something like that. And then they have the opportunity, when they reconvene as the first of the year, to do an exclusion. And they have until March 1st with a 2/3, like Mr. Howard said. If it doesn't pass, we have up until April 1st to take our adopted budget back in July and reduce it down by that the 16.09%. That's budget dollars. What I'm doing with those calculations with the salaries and the benefits and utilities, it's the actual spending impact, but we would have to take our budget down by 4.8 million.
So we're not talking about solutions tonight, but we're talking about them all the time in the background. And if we get to that point, we will be. Prior to that point, of course, we'll keep the board in the loop and the public in the loop as much as possible. But we may need to have a special meeting to sit and talk about what our options are around and what that drop dead date is and how we handle that.
If as Andy pointed out, it's time that our community's going to have to step up and help us. And, okay, how can I say this? If, let's say that somebody in our community, let's say somebody who's, and you can't help but think it's going to be a politician who's going to help, or who's going to pull people together to and try to explain, you know, the math is tough to understand, but the concept is this.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to get into the, you know, the history and all that. Well, maybe you could have. If somebody who can pull people together, how do you think the community would react? Has anything like this ever happened before? Well, you said it a couple times.
Not on the
Not
radar
at this
because it
magnitude.
was
Not of this magnitude.
it was done.
I understand, but
it was done.
It was
They voted.
fixed before.
It was excluded. They reanalyzed the aggregate spending limit the next year, and it never crossed on a graph like that.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this is a big step right here. These leaders right here, our school board, talking about this issue. and, you know, at least exposing what it is and not creating a panic. But we also have some teachers in the crowd, and I know that some of their colleagues and them have been talking about how they can share how it affects them. And there's a newspaper article over the weekend, and some of them are angry that they have to deal with this right now. It's been a tough couple years.
Yeah. I don't care if you are a school board member, you're a teacher, you're a parent of a student, whatever. Every community in this state and every person in every community in this state would be affected if this is not taken care of. This is not just an education issue. It will have serious impacts across the board. So, you know, just because you don't have kids in school or because you're not on the school board or whatever, don't think it isn't going to affect you.
You know, for me, it's a moral too. You know, I think about our kids, the impact, but also the lesson. You know, if you have a student who does chores, earns $100, and yet you're going to say, well, you can only spend $84 of it. And it's not because we want you to save for later. It's just we're going to keep that in a box that you can never open ever, never get back.
Yeah.
What would a kid say to that? That's not fair. How is this?
And I think, to follow on Deb's comment, there's such great interest in our community right now for education. I mean, on all levels, on all sides. Like you said, this affects everybody. Parents need to understand, no matter what your beliefs are politically, that there's a potential that this is going to keep your kids out of school or significantly impact their educational experience. We need to be speaking up.
I have news for you too. If we have a bunch of teachers leave, that's not going to be immediately fixed.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not just an if this happens, it impacts us. It's already impacting us. Holding hostage education in this form, we've already seen the impact. We already have reason to be frustrated with this, regardless of future decisions. Certainly it can get 10 times worse, or more than 10 times worse. But I think it should be clear to everybody in this community that we've already been impacted by this in a negative way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, in my almost 30-year career, we've seen a lot of attacks on public education in Arizona from the legislature, and this is huge. And so, I guess if I'm going to stop talking and wrap it up and say, if it happens, it's going to create such chaos that there will be change, and it will be good change. But if you take 49 and just blow it up for even a quarter or whatever it is, 49th in the nation, and just blow it up, then you're going to get some attention from some people. And they're, you know, so I guess there's threats on both sides, but that's my thought, is that I hope people are getting tired of this battle we're fighting just to get our kids paid at number 49 in the nation. I hope people are getting tired of it.
I was going to say something in that.
I don't think, and as Joe said earlier, we aren't going to reach any solutions tonight, but we need to be aware of what's going on. We need the community to be aware of what's going on, and I think we probably can move on with our agenda at this point. But we have not heard the last of this.
And can I add one thing?
Brian.
This is videotaped. So please, if you're watching, thank you, PA, for being here. It'll be posted on our website. Share this so that people can hear this discussion and know the black and white of the numbers. We don't have solutions.
Yes.
But this is the reality of where we're at.
Deb, can I do a segue?
Yes.
As Kelly Bradstreet would say, can we talk about curriculum now?
All right. right, the next item on our agenda is a first look at the proposed English language arts curriculum for grades 5 through 12.
That's correct. After months of work with the committee, they have come up with recommendations for ELA curriculum for 5th through 12th grade, and you'll see those on your agenda. And we have now, starting today, we're doing a 60-day public view of this curriculum right back there in the workroom. And also, our community members can look online at the curriculum as well if they don't want to come down to the district office. But it's beautiful curriculum. You guys should go in there and take a look at it. It's gorgeous, and it has everything. And the teachers are super excited about it because they've been grabbing for things to teach the standards for years, and now they don't have to. So I just wondered if you had any questions about this.
What you just said, Kelly, about they've been wanting to do this, and they're very happy with the results, because what is the big win for this curriculum right now? In other words,
What was most appealing to them?
yeah, what's most appealing to them?
I would say that it hits all of the standards, first of all, but there's multimedia in it, there's engagement, there's differentiation, there's a variety of texts that are, relevant to students today, activities that, the teachers don't have to come up with the activities themselves, nor do they have to look for the pieces themselves. So there's a lot of reasons why it's a big win.
I can't wait to see it.
Yes, I hope you will.
And we have 60 days to review it.
That's correct.
And the public has 60 days.
The public has 60 days.
to
Yeah,
review
that's
it.
right. And we just got the word out today. Sarah sent that out to parents, now know about it. We'll have it on our website. We're trying to get the word out as much as possible so that people have a chance to look at it and comment on it. And any comments that are made, I will share with the board so that you can see what the community has to say about it before you vote on it in April.
Thank you.
Anything else for Kelly?
I think this was my punishment. I had to go last tonight. Just because I'm leaving.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Next item on the agenda is future agenda items. I assume we could put this AEL on our future agenda item.
Yeah, well, there's also the community comments item.
Oh, sorry, I looked past it, sorry. We are sharing community comments that we've received, so board members, anybody have comments?
I have a number of them, actually.
Okay.
A couple are just, I've gotten comments from longtime community members, from parents, from alumni, retirees who have grandchildren in the district. The first couple of these were basically, since it's the month of February, sending a special verbal Valentine to all the teachers and staff in the district for all the great work that they do. No matter where your talents are within the district, sincere thank you for everything you do, your dedication, commitment, professionalism, and your love of our community's children and youth. Additionally, a retiree with a grandchild in the district wants to say that she continues to be amazed at the effort put out by all of our staff during the pandemic. So that's some of the community feedback I've heard. I also spoke with a professional person in the community who is a parent, was concerned primarily about making sure that we were able to address raises for staff to keep teachers here, which we obviously are trying to do, but also just a recognition of what public schools do in this environment, and how this person felt that his children were getting the best education they possibly could because they're in with everybody, because public schools take every student. They don't get to pick and choose their students. He likened it to a baker making blueberry muffins, getting a batch of blueberries, and they get to throw out the bad blueberries. Public schools don't get to throw out bad blueberries. But his kids have learned empathy and compassion as a result of being in a public school system. And that was a great piece of feedback I'd received. I've also received a number of responses about the aggregate expenditure limit. And kind of echoing or prefacing the comments that I made, it's our responsibility to our public school districts to lift the aggregate expenditure limit, and we need to have the community involved in contacting our legislators and understanding what shutdowns and this budget impact will do in Prescott, not just to the schools, but in the community of Prescott. And these are people that have had children throughout our district, that currently have grandchildren in our district, that are retirees. So it's not just one group that's concerned about this. They're terrified that something's going to happen with the schools. And so again, I hope the community understands the critical nature of this in using whatever voice we can to speak to our legislators and our elected officials to make sure that something happens to prevent this down the road. So that's a summary
Okay,
of
thank
the
you, Andy.
feedback I've had.
Any other board members have comments they've received?
I honestly can say in an embarrassed way that most of the people I know don't know about this.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I'm not sure if they did, if it would make a big difference, but I would hope it does, because, just because.
Yeah.
Because they should.
All right.
Hopefully they will.
Yeah. All right. Now, future agenda items. Anybody have anything you want on the agendas? All right, our next meeting, assuming that we would not need a special meeting before that, would be March 1st at 5 o'clock right here.
D-Day.
Yep.
Yeah, true.
And you will be contacted to try to set up a one-on-one meeting to go over the budget in the next month as well.
Yeah, Sarah will be in touch with some dates.
Okay.
That work for you?
All right, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.